Welcome to a new series where we're going to be covering legendaries from Destiny 1. Today we're going to start out with some hand cannons. Aya's Luna dropped randomly at the end of Crucible matches. This weapon was almost considered like a little Hawk Moon, and it could actually roll with the perk Look in the Chamber. This allowed one random bullet in the magazine to deal extra damage, just like the Hawk Moon in Destiny 1. Next up we've got Her Mercy, and this would actually drop from Prison of Elders. I've always liked the design of the Queen's weapons, and this hand cannon is no exception. Then we've got the Imago Loop. Now this is akin to the Fatebringer, and it could actually roll with Firefly and also Outlaw, making this essentially the Fatebringer 2.0. Finally, we have the Devil You Don't. This weapon was sometimes sold by the Vanguard Quartermaster in the tower. Today we're going to be covering some legendary auto rifles, so the one you're seeing on screen is called the Does Not Bow, and this was a Fallen themed auto rifle. I completely forgot how strong auto rifles were in Destiny 1, but as you can see from the gameplay, these things are absolutely shredding. Next up we've got the Antipodal Hindsight. You probably recognise the style of this weapon, and that's because you can actually buy it from the Crucible Quartermaster. Then we've got a Dead Orbit themed auto rifle called the Extremophile. Now personally, I was always new Monarchy, so I never actually got this weapon. Finally, we've got the Zaranea D, which you could actually buy from Banshee. When auto rifles were strong in PvP, this was a really good pick. As you can imagine, there's a lot of legendaries in Destiny 1, so if there's any specific ones you want me to cover, then please leave a comment and I'll add them to the list. Anyway, thank you for watching and goodbye. Midas Reckoning was a Taken King fusion rifle that dropped from the King's Fall raid, and I do quite like this weapon's unique aesthetic. Next up we've got the Rise of Iron hand cannon, the Lingering Song. Now this weapon actually sounds really cool. Then we've got a scout rifle called the Hero Formula, and from time to time you can actually buy this from the Crucible Quartermaster. Finally, we have the Wormwood. Now, this sidearm absolutely dominated in PvP, and if you had the right roll, this thing was an absolute beast. As you can see from looking at the weapon, you can actually get this from the Future War Cult. Anyway, at the end here, I just wanted to say thank you for 5,000 subscribers. The channel is growing really fast, and I just wanted to say thank you for that. In this video, we're going to cover Trials weapons, and don't be surprised if some of these actually make their way to Destiny 2. Blind Perdition was a pulse rifle that came out in Rise of Iron. If you were lucky enough to get the Adept version of this weapon, then it would actually come with Snapshot intrinsically. Again, from Rise of Iron, we have the Vision Stone. This was a kinetic auto rifle with a magazine of 37. Moving on, we have Exile's Student. Just like the last two weapons, if you got the Adept version of the Exile Student, it would actually come with Snapshot intrinsically. This was a really fun hand cannon because it could roll with both explosive rounds and Firefly. Finally, we've got another pulse rifle, this time the Reflection Sum. If you were lucky enough to get the Adept version of this weapon, you would actually get a perk called Last Resort. This was essentially the Destiny 1 version of Celerity. Anyway, there's loads more Trials weapons I have got to get through, but thank you so much for watching and goodbye. Okay, I get it, people want to see more Trials weapons, but I am just going to say at the start here, I will get round to everything, so don't panic if your weapon isn't in this video. The Water Star is a Taken King Trials hand cannon. With the right roll, this weapon could be really strong, and it's also worth noting you could actually get an Adept version of this. Next up, we've got the Inward Lamp Scout Rifle. Having full auto on this weapon made it much easier to use, and if you were trying to use this for PvE, synergizing with Zen Moment and Triple Tap was actually a pretty good bet. The Burning Eye was a scout rifle that came out in Rise of Iron, and the Adept version of this weapon could also have Snapshot intrinsically. Finally, my favourite weapon on this list, we have the Doctrine of Passing. This high rate of fire auto rifle was really good in PvP, and with the right perks this thing could be an absolute beast. It's worth noting the Adept version of this weapon would have Last Resort intrinsically. This perk would allow your weapon to handle and reload faster if you were the last living player on your team. Anyway, thank you for watching and goodbye. Today we're going to be covering class-specific legendaries from the Gunsmith. Now these were borderlining on being exotic as they did have completely unique perks. For the Warlock we had a fusion rifle called the Susanoo. Elemental Transfusion allowed you to change the element of this weapon by simply dealing damage with your subclass abilities. Essentially, depending on the element of your subclass, dealing damage with your abilities would change the elemental damage type of this weapon to the same as your subclass. Next up, the Titans got a shotgun called Immobius. The unique perk on this weapon would allow kills inside outside of your Ward of Dawn with Armor of Light to just not use ammo whatsoever. So essentially, this meant you could throw down a bubble, and as long as you're inside of it, you wouldn't actually use ammo on this weapon, which was really cool. Finally, the Hunter's got a sniper rifle called the Still Piercer. When you had this sniper rifle equipped, the unique perk would allow it to increase your radar's resolution. Honestly, not as good as the other two, but it's still a pretty cool looking weapon. I just want to thank Spectre and also Technomatrix for the gameplay. Anyway, thank you for watching and goodbye. We're going to start looking at some faction legendaries, so today we're going to start off with New Monarchy. Starting off, we've got the Vanquisher. Now this was a legendary auto rifle that could roll with the perk Persistence. This allowed the weapon to be more accurate the longer it was fired, and this worked really well with glass half full. Next up, we've got the New Monarchy rocket launcher, the Admonisher. Now, I completely forgot about this perk, but this rocket launcher could actually roll with a perk called Tripod. This allowed the rocket launcher to hold 3 shells at once. Moving on, we've got a hand cannon called the Red Hand. This was a kinetic hand cannon with a magazine of 10, and with the right roll, this thing could actually be pretty good. Last but definitely not least, we have the Judgment Shotgun. Again, I completely forgot about this perk, but Final Round allowed the last bullet in the magazine to deal bonus damage, and this could actually roll on this shotgun. Anyway, I will get around to future War Cult and also Dead Orbit, but thank you for watching and goodbye. Welcome back. Today we're going to be covering Dead Orbit's legendary faction weapons. First up, we have the Final Rest fusion rifle, and you can actually get rangefinder and hidden hand on this weapon, making it an absolute beast in PvP. Next up, we have Defiant Gravity A. This weapon could actually roll with a perk called Skip Rounds. Now this was essentially ricochet rounds, but it would also allow you to carry more reserves and it would slow you down. Moving on, we have a shotgun called the Hide and Seek 42. As you can imagine, this was a pretty good bit of kit and it could roll with some pretty cool perks. At this point, I could probably do a whole video on just Destiny 1 perks. This weapon could roll with Performance Bonus. Kills with the weapon would have a chance to grant bonus reserve ammo. At the end here, we have an auto rifle called the Unwilling Soul. Again, since auto rifles were so much better in Destiny 1, this thing was really good for PvP and even PvE with the right roll. Anyway, what do you think to these weapons? Next up, we're going to cover Future War Cult. In terms of Destiny 1 Future War Cult weapons, we first have the Fulcrum. This was a pretty nice all-round kinetic hand cannon, and I also quite like the look of this weapon. Next up, we have the Chosen Sniper Rifle. This weapon could actually get a short gaze sight and also snapshot, making it really good in PvP. Then we have the Villainy, and if you look close enough at this weapon model, you'll probably realise this looks identical to the Redrix's Broadsword and Redrix's Claymore. Unfortunately, you couldn't get Desperado on this weapon, but you could get Headseeker, which was pretty good in Destiny 1. Then finally, we have another kinetic hand cannon. This time it's called the Chance. And I have just checked, and yes, you can get Look in the Chamber on this weapon. I think it would be a bit of a disservice to the name if you couldn't. Anyway, thank you for watching, and goodbye. Today, we're going to be looking at some Destiny 1 Crucible weapons. First up, we have the final boss, and as you're seeing from this gameplay, this thing was absolutely insane in PvP. You could get Snapshot, a short gaze scope, and you could also get the Unflinching perk. Next up, we have the Cryptic Dragon. This was a great workhorse weapon for PvE, and it could roll with some fan favourite perks like Firefly, Outlaw, and also explosive rounds. For the people was a kinetic auto rifle.
And we give it back to you, the people.
So this weapon could roll with Persistence and also glass half full. Finally, we've got the Lowdown, which was another kinetic auto rifle. Anyway, at the end of the video here, I just wanted to say thank you for 6,000 subscribers. The channel is growing really fast, and I just wanted to say thank you for that.